Friday. Okay, well, I got Pepper here. Pepper and I are here. It's us. And so we're talking about all kinds of stuff. So, hey, YouTube reversed their decision on my nudity episode. And
Well,
they
that's
reviewed it and discovered that yes, indeed, it's totally artistic nudity and involves 3D maquettes and does not in fact involve real people. So,
well. I mean, the lesson is their algorithm does not. It doesn't do its. Humans cannot be replaced by machines a lot
right.
of the times, and I hate to say this, but algorithms do mess up a lot.
hmm Right. Well,
Um,
nudity is going to be the topic of discussion for today because I have a couple of things that I want to think through. Um,
okay.
as we all know, and I have talked about numerous times, Bellatrix Rising will have nudity in it because it's 500 years from now and people have gotten over their body shame issues. And so they do not equate sex with nudity and nudity with sex. Therefore, they shower together and then they will change outfits together and we'll have them getting into space suits and just stripping off their uniform and putting on space suits while talking to each other and things like that. Um, but that does violate a ton of various online guidelines. So there is a structure discussion I want to have where I start thinking about some of the structure that we're doing on things.
Okay.
So, for example, I went and looked up webtoons. I was seeing an article this morning about someone who is very, very successful on webtoons.
hmm
And I've been thinking I should do webtoons.
I have a webtoon comic, by the way.
Oh,
It's in Webtoon Canvas. Yeah.
yeah, I don't have a canvas yet. Well, I mean, I have an account. I have had an
Yeah.
account forever. Tamerlane actually exists out on Webtoons. Nobody reads it, which doesn't surprise me. I went through their Artist 101 documentation and realized that part of the reason that nobody reads Tamerlane is because I'm not following their Artist 101 setup.
So what's
So
their Artist 101?
like how you should set up your thumbnails and how you should set up your descriptions and things
Ah,
like that. So I'm not doing it right. So nobody can read it because it doesn't make any sense. So which is fine. It's Tamerlane and that belongs to CBS technically speaking. So I'm just gonna and not do that. But I went on ahead and downloaded their 101 and I'm going to go on ahead and just do all the processes that they've got for it and follow it through and fill out all their checklists. And then that way I'll make sure I have done everything correctly. Big thing about Webtoons is their canvas size is really different. So,
it is. But
um,
I want to kind of piggyback on that comment for a second.
yeah,
You can do it in a way where you
it's
can take
both.
the images and then you basically just make your actual page.
Right.
Because I read a lot of Webtoon comics.
Sure.
And so when they go to print, when the authors go to print those, they are reformatted for print.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
so,
what
I mean, I
makes
totally that this entire article is about exactly that. Can you do a regular comic and webtoon? And I actually I think about this a little bit, and I think it'd be interesting. So there's a few things that I've thought about on this one. Thing number 1, obviously there are going to be 2 versions of my comic. Um, and I was just talking to my wife about this, and I was like, uh, so they suggest if you have nudity in your comic to conveniently placed steam or objects in the way or things like that, which means that they won't throw my comic out for having nudity in it as long as the nipples and vaginas and penises are covered and butts, because of course we can't have
well, okay, so I have read several Webtoon comics, and yes, there has been an occasional
a butt is allowed.
but to
Um,
that butt.
but
But to that butt, I will say that the butt is like shadowed
Yeah,
so that you don't see the crack. So you just see part of it.
part butt
Part
part.
of the butt. But
But
yeah,
it's not. It's just not going to stop
there's
being funny. I'm
yeah,
12.
I know. It's like I'm just gonna say butt all the time. Um, uh, geez, what am I saying? I'm on the LGBT thing. We're obsessed with butts.
Right?
Um, um,
Does that put you on
so
the spectrum too?
yeah, I know.
Because like I'm on a spectrum.
Yeah, I know.
Makes us both
I'm
spectrumy.
on more than one spectrum. I think.
Mm.
Um,
You're on so many
what
spectrums. You just like
I
have
know,
different instruments to measure you.
I know, right?
You send different satellites
Um,
up to measure you.
what I but what I do like about webtoons is they give you the opportunity to also disclose, hey, right at the top of your comic, you can put a space where it's a single image that you drop another image underneath, and you can basically say, warning. This episode contains this information. If this is triggering, like, I read a comic called Lore of Olympus. It's on Webtoons. Lore of Olympus talks about
I was gonna say, if you're talking about Greek
it ta-
gods, you're
yeah,
just all over the place.
it talks about rape. It talks about um, uh, sex. It talks about trauma. It talks about a whole bunch of things. And a
Mhm.
lot of the people who are trying to deal with that stuff may not necessarily enjoy reading it because it
Mhm.
can trigger anxiety. It can trigger a lot of different responses. And so Webtoons does this really good job of actually allowing people to put that at the hot top header. And so long as you have that, your comic won't be taken down because you are informing the people who are about to read, hey, this involves blood, involves some slight nudity, adult situations. If you're underage, you should not be, reading
Right.
this. Now, with you, and this happens a lot with creators that are on Canvas, where they're having two versions of their own comic. Like some of them are because they have like a Spanish version and an English version, and they're writing them at the same time, but
Right.
they're using the same images. Just one's a different language than the other. But then others, like yourself, they have ones that are more adult and then more kid friendly.
Right.
So, like the first scene originally that you had described to me would kind of be perfect for that. In which case, you would have the more adult one, like where Chang is, being conveniently hid behind
Right.
like houseplants and stuff like that, and then you have the other one where Chang is completely covered right from the beginning.
And that's what I was talking about too. Okay, there we go. I wanted to see somebody had mentioned manga page style manga or webtoons, and I wanted to see what that looked like. So I'm loading it
You
now.
haven't seen it? I think,
So here is the thing. Webtoons came to my attention in 2014 when they went global, and then they had a huge epic freaking booth of doom at color or at comic Comic-Con,
mm-hmm.
DPCC, and um when that happened, I was like, oh, this is fascinating. I would put Tamerlane on here, but then I was like, I don't want to put Tamerlane on here because CBS and I don't own it. And so I sort of dropped out of that. But then I came across an article this morning while being completely sleepless, like I usually am, and not being able to sleep. I was reading, and I came across an article where they were talking about this comic artist who does strips, like comic strips, like
Mm-hmm.
normal, but he does interesting kind of different comic strips. In that he some take a month to create a strip and some take like 2 hours to create a strip, and so he's got such variety that what he does is he just builds up a backlog of strips before he puts a whole bunch of them all out on webtoons at the same time. And I was like, that's fascinating. And then I thought about it and I was like, and then they were talking about the fact that the two generations below us are, not Gen X, but like millennials, Gen Z, and those two generations are really into webtoons now because they can just scroll up on their phone.
Mhm.
And they were talking about mobile being the new format that for comics,
Yeah.
the new way you read things. And I realized I have like a Comixology
Mhm.
account that I just recently canceled because I never read anything online. And I've been thinking about this and I've been going, I think I'm being myopic. I think that if I want to have reach, I need to be able to put out in different formats that aren't the ones that I in my head think of.
Mhm.
So, as a Gen Xer, of course, I went to the comic shop and picked up comics from a store. That was
Mhm.
before we could put it on our little mobile phone and scroll through it. And as a Gen Xer, I'm getting old now and my eyes are getting weak. And I'm like, yeah, I hate looking at my phone. Yeah. So I've been kind of myopic on this. So I've been looking at this going, I wonder if I can do this, make it work for both. And I agree. Now, I agree with what you were saying, which is that there are some real interesting things they were saying in the 101, which is if you are having a transition between two scenes, we recommend putting 120 pixels between it. And
Yep.
I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Um,
And you can minus that or grow it depending
no matter
on
how
how
long
fast
it
you
is.
want the comic to read.
Right. So, oh, yeah. This version of Carsophona started in 2006. There's a quality shift along the way. Oh, poor kid.
Yeah,
Um,
there's some comics that are on Webtoon
oh,
where
this is perfect. This is exactly what I'm looking at here. Forgive me, dear Carsophona, um, Shilin. Forgive me for putting your artwork up, but this is fascinating. And what I'm looking at here is so this is Carsophona on Webtoons, and I'm fascinated that this is literally like what I'm putting up, like
yeah.
exactly what I'm after. And so, and they just ran this way. A couple of things I noticed is this: it's red, right, except she says red right to left. Well, it is red right to left. So I was about to say, but it's left to right, but it's not. It's right to left. So the arrow goes this way. But interesting that this is sort of um,
I've seen that disclaimer on Webtoons that starts right at the beginning versus at the tail end.
right because like this
Especially
is a manga,
yeah, because a lot of people do complain. I hate to
right?
say it, but they do complain about like not being able to read it properly or
Clear my
it just
banners.
yeah.
Sorry, because I
Um,
realize you can't see what I'm looking at here.
hey
Morning,
Brent.
Brent. Brent, things are going on here. We're talking about all kinds of stuff and
Yeah.
structure and design. But
Now the one thing that I can say is with webtoons there is a breakdown where you can still do manga style, but then you can actually take the individual frames if it's a high enough resolution that you've designed it in print, and you can break them up, and then you
let-
can.
that's it, Brent. You're fired again. We gotta fire Brent.
Brent's not fired.
Okay, you're rehired,
Yeah.
but
Um.
take that as a warning. I don't
Um.
know.
Anyways, so there's a way of doing webtoons which I'm still trying to plot out in my own, like for my own stuff, because when I did Clover Patch, which is on Webtoon
Can I
Canvas.
hold you for just a second? Because I
Yeah.
don't think Brent's up to speed. So let me get Brent up to speed real quick. Read an article this morning that was talking about webtoons and talking about accessibility to a younger generation. So, in light of that, I went and researched webtoons. I have an account on webtoons, but it has Tamerlan on it. Tamerlan hasn't seen so much as a single viewer. That's okay. I'm not worried because I actually didn't do it right. I noticed that I didn't upload it correctly. Um, the long and the short of this is we've been talking about the ins and outs of what to do to make it dual format so that it can be printed like a normal manga but also be used on Webtoons so it can be accessible as well. And originally, my thought was the way Webtoons are configured, I'd have to redraw the entire thing. Read an article then this morning while waiting for my teacher conference, which said, no, there are a number of traditional manga that are on Webtoons. And I was looking at Carsophona, which is what you saw just a minute ago. Okay, now bringing back to that, there's the TLDR really quick rundown.
Right.
Now, on to what Pepper was saying. Sorry, Pepper.
No, it's okay. So if you go on to Webtoons, you have Webtoons Canvas, you have Webtoons, like, personally. A lot of what goes on there and a lot of these platforms, you also have to be in their chat rooms. You have to be friend a lot of other people, and you have to connect with others. Um, but what I do see is the people who are doing, like, one person that I know that lives in Colorado. Her name is Morgan Beam. She's actually a cart. She's an artist that works with Swamp Thing and a couple of others, and she's been on Webtoons as well. And she actually sets up her pages in a way where she can format it for Webtoons, but then she can take them and she breaks them all up so that she can do it for print later.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is with Webtoons, she basically describes it as going into columns rather than full pages. And since she's a watercolor cartoonist when she does her own comics, you just see her basically do these long strips where they just go down so that she has continuous scrolling.
Right.
And then when she scans them in so that it fits Webtoon.
Well, there are a couple of things that I've noticed as well here. For one, Clip Studio Paint has Webtoon format. So you
Yes.
can start a new illustration in Webtoon format. It
Mhm.
already formats it to be the correct size. Two, I noticed that Webtoons doesn't have a continuous format. It has pages that are really long and really thin, but then they stack them one on top of another.
Yep.
And that's really what I'm noticing is that those, if I can figure out what the ratio is
They
of
actually have
Webtoon.
it.
Oh, okay.
They,
Well,
they
I was
do
just
tell you the ratio that you need.
going to be a thing. I was just going to.
Yeah, so you have a ratio for width that I believe it's 980. Hold on. Uh,
Oh, this one's brand new. Oh, and beautiful. Oh, I love beautiful art. Wow. Clap, 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 clap.
let's see. Because you have the downloader resources. So did you do the creators resource?
I did 101.
Okay, so
But I mean,
I believe in
um,
that one it actually has the format for the dimensions in pixels.
so you're referring to Twonomics. I'm going to just go on ahead and subscribe to Daytime Star because it's very, very, very pretty art. And I like pretty art. I will read anything if it's pretty art, which is kind of why I am who I am, I guess. It does show a daily schedule or a weekly schedule. I guess everything comes up by week, once
Mhm.
a week, or whatever is sort of the standard function.
Right.
Um, so I'm looking through, I mean, not a lot in there. I'm looking through here on these. I see sort of some of the sci-fi ones that I'm looking to see what's always going on here.
Oh, okay. I found the formatting for you, by the way.
Okay.
So the formatting for Webtoon is 800 pixels wide and 1,280 pixels long.
Right.
Now everything is DPI 72 or more, but I believe 72 is where they want you to do because you can upload a file size that is 2 megabytes in a file size, but you can upload a
20.
full batch of images that
Oh,
equals
20.
20 megabytes.
Gotcha.
Um, so what that means is, like, even if you do like individual images, so long as you don't go beyond the 20 megabytes, you're good.
Right. So
but
here's what
your
I
width
snagged.
has to be 800
Right.
pixels.
So yeah, I've snagged a whole bunch of. I just went and screen capped the entire thing. Right. I
Yeah.
screen capped. First of all, I screen capped Tamerlan and
Mhm.
noticed where I was just missing things. So like there's no vertical thumbnail. There's the square thumbnail's not at the correct resolution. Um, so they didn't display it. I didn't put a second genre, and my summary was really whatever, minimal. So I caught on. I just went on ahead and screen capped that so that I make sure that I have that ahead of time. Then I went down here, and uh, this is their little 101 function, which I thought was really cool. Dot 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 sort of thing. Um, so I went through and looked at just this because what I'm thinking is I can do anything in my comic as long as I have the rules.
Mhm.
I mean, I will tell. So if I think about this now, there could be rules that I can make that are things like here is a spot where in the comic we're going to take a pause. And that means that in the comic book, we do X. And in Webtoon, we do Y. And so when we come up to this point in the script, I'll just put a note in the script that says, remember to do dual versions of this. Because I think we could do, um, there are things that I'm really liking about the Webtoon format that are freeing and liberating to me that you can't do in comic books. Um, but there are other things that I've been thinking about, and we haven't gotten to it because we got sidetracked a lot.
Yeah.
Like there are things that they talk about here that are really interesting to me. Like here, use this is like a no-no in comic world, in like traditional comics, using the same picture over and over and over. That is so a no-no. You're not supposed to do that. Which
Mhm.
is funny because it's an unspoken rule. Nobody says it, but
I,
you
I,
learn it.
well, you know what? That's American comics because I've read some manga, like printed manga, that
Which they do that.
they've outright copied and pasted an image
Well, and
several
it
times
was
in the manga.
it
Like I'm
comes
not.
from there's actually a wonderful strip from Calvin and Hobbes where he specifically tackles this because he went to the photocopier and photocopied all four panels. So it's Calvin talking to Hobbes, but they're both walking along in the forest, and it's clear that all four panels are identical.
Yeah.
And Calvin's doing the so my dad just told me that we're not supposed to photocopy any of these panels in a comic strip. That's stupid, isn't it? Like the whole comic is all about it and it's all meta. But
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's interesting. It comes from the era of photocopying, and it's because if
Yeah.
you photocopy or photostat, as it was in the 70s, your panels, then they would get degrading. They would start to degrade and fall apart. Well, none of that's true in digital age. The pictures that I copy from panel A are identical to panel B. There's no degrading of the data anymore. So um, I think that's something I might just reject or eject at some point in time. But looking at all of these things where it talks about stuff, like using custom brushes and shading and textures and stuff for the background, that I already do because I do all of my backgrounds in 3D. Simplify your character design. And then they were like, use this character sheet. I love their character setup. They've got this like character sheet with a drawing design underneath it. I think that's cool. I'll fill these out for each one of my characters. That way, because I've already got all this data, just not organized like this. This is nicely organized. I'll just organize it. All the data exists.
Yeah.
Then it talks about the checklist, like series title and stuff like that, and going through the checklist to make sure that everything is correct. And I'm not going to publish until we're ready, until I've got an entire comic ready. But I need to figure out what does 32 pages look like in Webtoons. And if so, what does that look like in what a Webtoons episode would be? Does that mean I break them down into 16s or into 8s? Probably 8s, because then that gives me a month to put out a 32-page comic where it's going out on a normal procedure.
So the one thing I do like about Webtoons is you can select. Now, I found this when I was uploading my own. Is you can select in advance that something's going to be coming up.
Yeah.
And you can, in some authors, I believe if you get, if you're trying to make money and have income coming in, you can select it so that you actually get paid if someone wants more pages prior to the release.
Right.
So it's kind of like it's set up so that you make money.
Which is cool. That's really neat. I like that.
Which I mean, like if you go into the things like they actually have a thing making money. So for Webtoon Canvas, which is not Webtoons, Canvas is basically where they test out a bunch of comics, and their most popular, basically their most popular, or what? Yeah, it's essentially a digital comic book shop. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, that one you could you start there, and if you get noticed by someone that's on the official Webtoon side, that's when you have like a full-on discussion of how long each season's going to be. And what I notice is my favorite episodic people that I know, they will take like a full month and build up a whole bunch of them, and then start working on the end part prior to them being done, so that when they're starting to release, they have like 5 episodes ahead of where they're currently working. So
There's a couple
you don't have to do 32, is what I'm saying. Is you can do like 16 pages
I'm with you.
and slowly release
I have
them.
actually a thought that just came to mind. First of all, I really work really good under a structure.
Mm-hmm.
It's stressful to hit deadlines for me to begin with. It's more stressful if the deadlines are ambiguous and unclear. And so I work really good knowing that my deadlines are X, Y, or Z. And what I'm thinking here is this. I feel like Webtoons, as far as a format goes, you have proof. Yes. And Brent has been pushing quite a bit to get things done, but he's actually been helping a whole lot because he's putting a structure on me, which is extremely, extremely useful. And that's really good for me, and it helps a lot. So here's what I was thinking. 32 pages is what one issue is for Bellatrix Rising. I am not sure I can do 32 pages in 1 month. I think that's too fast. So that's too stressful. I don't think I can do it, but I might be able to do 32 pages in 2 months. 16 pages a month. But that means that that's pretty much 4 pages a week. And the way the Webtoons format works, I could stretch those out quite a bit. You know what I mean? Like I could put things in between panels, in between half pages, top half of a page, then a huge space, then a bottom half of a page, or a picture of a single picture of a character, or a single picture of a ship, or, a thing like that could occur in a Webtoon that would make a page that would normally be 1 page would be it into a long page, and then do 4 long pages every month or every week. No, 16 finished pages. That's what I'm talking about, is like I'm not. Well, we haven't hit production side yet. One of the reasons why you and I are talking about what we're doing next week, Brent, talking to Brent, is because next week is going to be sort of proof of concept. How fast can we
Mm-hmm.
roll out 4 pages?
Mm-hmm.
If we buckle down and set them up, can we do 4 pages in a week? Can we?
Mm-hmm.
Can it even be done? I don't know. When I was doing Tamerlan, I sat in a teacher's room for 8 hours and had to go to 2 classes a day or sometimes 4 on the um well, I don't know. I mean, let's talk about this because like I think actually probably would be better to do 4 pages to next week, or at least try to do 4 pages into next week. Um and see what happens. So maybe we should do 4 pages into next week and see if we can't do 4 pages and set them up for Webtoon setup as well, knowing that this is all a first time and may end up being a mess. Because the comic, I was looking at the script that I have written, and I really think that script's probably 8 pages. It needs to be a multiple of 2, or it needs to be a multiple of 4 somehow anyway. I always end up doing. Oh, hey. There we go. What was the boobop? Did you get
That would
boobop?
be me. That
Okay.
would be me.
Okay, you got boobopped. Gotcha.
Yeah.
But right, but I've got that script. That's what I was saying. Looking at that script, it's already 8 pages. I only needed to change one thing in it. I think I needed to change 2 things in it, but it wasn't a big change. But right, well, and there's 2 things going on. I don't burn out when I'm trying to experiment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't usually burn out, and since we are trying an experiment, I shouldn't burn out. I burn out. My burnout time is, we're on set number 25 of 4 pages. That's when I'm like, oh. However, I was talking to my therapist. Everybody should have a therapist. And my therapist and I were discussing the fact that one of the problems ADDers have, and all ADDers have this, is looking at the big picture and completely freaking out and melting down. If you can chop it into
Mm-hmm.
little teeny pieces and accomplish this little piece, then accomplish this little piece, and then don't look at the big picture for a while, work on a large format and then break it down. You should get a real therapist. Everybody needs a real therapist. I actually am now 100% on board with this because we got new insurance, and now we have new insurance. I can actually
Mm-hmm.
go to a therapist for $25 a session, which is stupid cheap. And so we did. So, yeah, but Tormund just eats things. So, if your therapist is eating paper or things like that, then there's an issue. Same problem with George, why George can't be my therapist. There's a conflict of interest there too, because you can always threaten not to feed your therapist and make your therapist agree with you. So,
And I just sent you a link of the
Overpatch.
webtoons that I have up.
Overpatch. This is yours?
Mm-hmm.
I will now subscribe. Look at me subscribed. Damn, look at all of these pages you did.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I mean, I finished it because the this was never meant to be printed. I just wanted to put it out into the world, and I just basically was like, all right, well, I'm gonna put this out there. Um, I know they just changed your guidelines, so they've been wanting me to update my thumbnail for the page itself.
Yeah.
But I mean, it follows the previous guidelines already, and this was
And
uploaded a
this looks
long
like
time.
traditional pages. You could
Yeah,
theoretically just roll this out as a extra if you wanted to.
Right. However, a lot of people do cry when they read this comic. So, um, because of the nature of it, like I had to actually, when I uploaded, I actually had to put a disclaimer like on it. Uh,
Oh,
like
see the
basically,
cover.
I had
There's
to,
the cover.
yeah. So, yeah, there's three,
I like the cover.
yeah,
There we go. So done.
yeah. So,
Yep, that's our revised start. We're gonna do 4 pages. We're gonna roll into this thing. Let's get in there. Let's try this thing. So he's revising his prompt for me for next week.
how do you spell your comic, Tamberlane?
Tamerlane. There's no B. It's Tamer the Lame, is who it was named after.
Tamer.
Lane. But
I'm not
the
even finding it. You said that it was on Webtoons?
it may be gone.
All right. Did you put it on any others like Tapas or?
No, I mean, no, I haven't put it on anything else. Hang on real quick. Um, I'm looking to see where my dashboard is and to see what it's at.
Oh, I found it.
Oh, yeah, I have 0
I
likes.
found it. I found it. It's on Tapas.
Oh, yeah. It's out on Tapas.
Because yeah, you put them up in chapters on Tapas.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I don't have anything on Webtoon. So this is the important part. The series exists, but there are no episodes. That's why. You won't find it out here. That's why nobody's ever followed me on Webtoons. That explains so much.
Yeah.
What I should do is wipe this series out.
You should also probably, if you're concerned about the Webtoons one, Canvas, which is the one I'm looking at right now, it's definitely not the style that you have now. And it looks like you created one chapter, one comic per chapter on here.
Yeah, probably screwed it up really bad.
Um,
That's all right. We'll get it squared away. But if I make this dual format so it can live out here. What's Canvas Corner?
oh, Pori Tajak. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, hey, Pori Tajak. That's a great name. Writing that down. You have become a bad guy in my comic. The problem, of course, is that I'm noticing a flaw in my plan. If everybody comes in with Russian names on YouTube, then it's going to be invariably it's going to be like a problem with the fact that people are going to be like, "Ah, you always just do Russians who are the bad guys," and I'll be like, you don't understand, it was the bots on my YouTube channel. They were all thank you, Brent. No, I shouldn't be up on anything yet. um it has been it's been 2 years since I even considered working on Tamerlan, and it's been probably 5 since the last time I actually put pen to paper on Tamerlan. So anything out there won't be up to date at all on any format. The fact that I actually have a creator rig over here on Webtoon astonishes me to no end.
Mhm.
Like I actually made a rig. So I'm going to permanently delete Tamerlan because there's nothing in there. Oh, I understand that this will be and cannot be restored.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Now I can create a series and you can subscribe to it, but I'm going to think about this today and we're going to work on this. So we are not ready to do this yet, but we will create, well, I mean, we are ready to do this yet. So it is sci-fi and drama or action. What do we think? Drama. Probably drama. Yes? If you think about what's Star Trek,
Star
sci-fi
Trek
action,
Star Trek is a sci-fi, is a science opera, a
opera.
space opera.
Mine's a space opera. So
Yeah.
I think I'm going to call it sci-fi or sci-fi drama. What other things do I have in here? Inspirational, sports, informative, historical, crime mystery, supernatural, school. It's its own genre. Zombies, also its own genre. Post-apocalyptic, no. Horror, no. Thriller, heartwarming, superhero, action, short story, drama, slice of life. Sci-fi slice of life. I hate to say this, but that sounds like almost it, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Fantasy comedy. So I think I'm going to go for drama. Sci-fi drama. Series title: Bellatrix Rising. Summary. Okay, summary, guys. What's the summary of Bellatrix Rising? Let's talk about our summary. Because I've got enough things to make the thumbnails and start the series.
Mm-hmm.
So the question I've got is, if you had, what are you doing, you pest goober? George is doing something. He's attacking something. I don't know what he's after. If you were to think of Star Trek sci-fi drama, I think so too. I think that's where we are.
Yeah, sci-fi drama or basically sci-fi life, slice of life. But
Yeah, I like sci-fi slice of life as a humorous thing. I think what I will do is make a sci-fi slice of life version of this at some point down the road, which will be two characters talking to each other in short format. Like what we're talking about with what we're building right now with Bellatrix Rising for the scene between Mayrel and Navin in a shuttlecraft. All they're doing is it's the little scene prior to them getting to the Polaris, prior to them getting to all of the things. That's all. So, but that slice of life, I think, might be kind of fun. But there's no real plots to those. So that's kind of a different story. Okay. Let me ask this important question. Would you consider that Star Trek contains mature themes and situations?
not all 100% of the time, but it does.
So, should I check here if this series contains mature themes and situations?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Because even though it may not always, every single episode that you put up always has it, you will definitely need that when you do.
Yep.
The other reason why I say yes to that is you are not a for kids comic.
No.
Bellatrix Rising is not for a child. This is teenage young adult and up. This is like, from everything that I know about Bellatrix Rising so far, you would not want to market
Brent
this
seems
to
to be on the same page too. So, yeah, I've seen Brent saying the same sort of thing. Okay, cool. Well, I've clicked Please check here if this series contains mature themes and situations. Okay.
Yeah.
So
The other thing I want to do is I know that you're saying to do 4 pages, but may I make a suggestion? When you before you start releasing your pages, if you do them 4 at a time, make sure you have about 20 pages saved up so that you
Yeah.
can basically still have
there's no question about that at
yeah.
all. Absolutely going to
I have seen and come across comics where the comic
where they
creator
crash.
basically burnt themselves out because they were constantly uploading once a week.
Yep. We're not
And
doing
yeah, like just don't.
that. We're not doing
Yeah.
that. It's not happening. It's not happening. So we are going to we're setting up all these things. It's kind of fun.
So, side note, this is not to do with webtoons or anything like that. But here's one thing that's sad for me. I'm seeing memes now where they're saying anime characters I wanted to be like as a kid, and I'm seeing anime characters that were either in my late teens and early 20s as them as a kid as
Yeah.
6.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm like, God, this makes me feel old.
Yeah. You kidding me? Do you know what I'm running into? That same meme, anime characters that I wanted to be as a kid, and I don't recognize them. I don't recognize the characters. I don't even know
I
what show
had
they're
I had one character so far that I have not been able to recognize, and I'm like,
right? Okay, so let's look at some of these other guys and their as the kaiju wars rage on. Pacific Rim Amara follows a young heroine whose life shattered when she is orphaned during a devastating monster attack. Fighting to survive as her city is. This actually looks interesting. I subscribe to it. Mostly because I love Pacific Rim. But a Pacific Rim manga sounds kind of kick ass.
mhm.
And it was out in, oh, wow. Episode 10 was released April 19th, 2018. And they are out. There's 10 episodes here, and that's it. But it has 1.7 million views, and 110,000 people are subscribed to it. And it's the ones front and center on the main front page. So,
I'm gonna turn that off because they're
okay,
starting to
Kaiju Wars Rage On follows the heroine whose life was shattered when she was orphaned during a devastated fighting to survive as her city is destroyed. Okay. So, where are we? Wow, this is cool in this long format. Okay. So these episodes are pretty long. Okay, interesting. Sploosh. Burble, burble, burble. Burble, burble, burble. Lots of burbling. Wow, this goes down a long ways. Okay, written by Kevin Scott and Zhang Ran. Art by Big N. Letters by Taylor Esposito. Wow, they've got a lot of legendary comics. A lot of credits here.
Yes, they do.
Fascinating. Okay. Looking at some of the structure that's going on, I'm just trying to figure out what the structure is that we're dealing with here. 500 years after the Earth was destroyed in a devastating galactic war. Devastating galactic war. The human race has joined a what do I call it? Conglomerate, a union of planetary or a union of aliens called the Unity. That's a good start. It'll need to be edited, but it's a good start.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to figure out how to summarize stupid Bellatrix Rising anyway.
Well, I mean, you have everything that you need. It's just you need to, I guess, make it now. I guess.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Like, we got to just go in here and just do the thing. Just do the thing.
The
Right?
other thing you'll notice on Webtoon Canvas a lot is you will see a ton of people that are on one comic, and the main reason for that is usually the main writer or the person that is most known or posts it was originally creating it by themselves. And then slowly over time, you'll notice like their credit list gets longer and longer. Main reason why is they end up figuring out, hey, I need help. So
Yep. Well, and maybe that's, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, really, the only reason I do comics is because I have to do comics. I'm required by law internally.
hmm,
Like, so, though I do think that, yeah, synopsis is what I need. I've been meaning to do this anyway. I've got a text document that I use for all my hashtags, and I've been meaning to put brief descriptions of Springs and Bellatrix Rising in there forever. In this document, I already have hello, Donald.
you
Um,
know,
in this document, I already have uh, a number of important things like my own personal bio. So if anybody ever writes and says, "Hey, I'm going to add you to my webpage. Can you give me your bio?" I've already got it written out so that because they always want me to do that.
yeah.
Um,
No, there's some people that have reached out to me and asked me for that stuff, and it's just like, no, it's on the internet pretty much everywhere. Um, and if it's because I'm linked to a project, I go, how about you talk to these people because they have it. Like I don't want to give it to you. Sorry, I don't.
uh-huh.
Although apparently I'm actually too friendly for my own good at times.
Traveling from world to world.
You're
Starship
traveling from
skipper
world to war now?
Chang Lee. Yep, Starship skipper Chang Lee leads the diminutive Corvette UMC Kittiwake.
Mm.
Diminutive Corvette UMC Kittiwake as
Thanks, Brett.
right as
Yeah.
the crew I totally got to as, and I'm like, leaps from life to life, trying to put right what once was wrong, and hoping their next leap would be the leap home. Pew!
Okay, Scott Bakula.
Right, I know, right? That's all right, Donald. Go get yourself some coffee and join us. It's coffee time anyway, or whatever is your personal equivalent of coffee, because it could be a banana. Who knows? Just
I
don't say
mean,
banana in your ear because then you know what happens.
just don't tell us it's cocaine because that's
Right.
not a good sign. So there's
As
a
me and her crew solve.
ooh.
Oof. Oof. Quantum Leap's reboot. I'm so nervous
Um,
about the reboot.
well, I mean, they did include Scott Bakula in it, didn't they? My memory
Maybe.
serves me correctly. Well, no, I think he's like either a producer or he's in it like the maybe the first episode, something like that. Because I know the guy that played the person that was like always assisting him as he jumped, he that actor passed away.
Yes.
So it
Yep.
like I don't think if they do a reboot, I
Oh,
don't want to
wow.
see I don't want to see Scott Bakula again without him. I think yeah. Um,
Oh, wait. I'm
I'm
doing
like
it wrong.
you guys have me curious now. Quantum Leap reboot.
So, yeah,
Oh,
Dean
it's casting
Stockwell.
for diversity.
Dean Stockwell. Do what?
It's casting for diversity, apparently.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So they are looking for basically Middle Eastern or Asian Pacific Islander descent lead characters instead of stuff like that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if you were trying to save Sam Beckett. So, Quantum Leap was um, a household event at our house when it was on. My
Yeah.
sister was absolutely infatuated with Scott Bakula. She is so infatuated with Scott Bakula that she watched Enterprise. I say that with great weight. My sister is not a sci-fi fan. And so she watched all of Enterprise, all of it, every last bit of it, calling me all the time, going, I don't understand what they're talking about in this episode. What are they saying? I don't get it. I don't get it. It was very adorable and very funny and cracked me up every time. And it was one of the most endearing moments that my sister had ever done as in her 20s ish sort of world. She was actually following with me on Enterprise. Anyway, but Quantum Leap was an event. My mom liked watching it. I liked watching it. My sister liked watching it. So we watched all of the episodes as they were coming out, and we were devastated when the show was canceled. And my sister did the the thing from Apollo 13 where she ran to her room and saying, "I hate everybody, and I'm not going to blah 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 blah."
Well, from according to what I'm seeing is there I really just hope that it doesn't become like one of these things where it feels forced because I've been noticing like every single reboot that I've been seeing lately, every single time they're like, "Hey, we're calling for this type of casting for this show that's being rebooted," and then it's like once they reboot it, it doesn't feel natural. It's like almost as if there's a disconnect. The writers were still writing as like the old show, but there's like no true realistic writing involved. Um, to kind of give an update to the show of how we as a society have changed very much. So I'm happy to see that they're trying to cast non-binary characters for the new Quantum Leap. I'm happy that they're trying to change, like, so it's not all white people on screen. Yeah, I would like that because Scott Bakula kind of went into a man or a woman every single time he leaped, and it always turned into he was going into a white male or a white female, not anything else. I don't remember any
No,
episode
he went
where
into all kinds of different
but they
because
always but they always
the
portrayed him
rules,
as himself,
right?
just with like a wig or something like that.
No, he only wore a wig if he wore a wig.
Yeah,
I mean, like, as in, like, he wouldn't. So,
he put on a wig for one female that he jumped in because she wore a
because
wig.
she was a cancer survivor and she had
Yeah,
no hair,
yeah,
so he ended up with a wig, which actually was part of, yeah. Like I was going to say,
yeah,
Donald's right. He could jump anywhere in his lifetime. So since he was born in 1945, he could jump anywhere from 1945 to present, and a number of episodes were him jumping into black men and women in the 50s in the South and having to suffer all of the horrors of being in one of them. He jumped into a black man who was about to be hanged for raping a white woman, which he didn't do.
right.
And Ziggy was like, he didn't do it. And the whole episode was trying to get him acquitted of that. And he couldn't. He couldn't get them acquitted because he couldn't, because everybody was like, yeah, whatever, you know, because you're a black guy and blah, 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 blah. No. Quantum Leap was way ahead of its time on that one.
Well,
No
okay, let me
non-binary. He did jump into a homosexual once with AIDS, but
yeah.
that whole episode was like everybody came unglued. The censors came unglued. The TV network came unglued. Everybody came unglued because it was like,
Basically,
you're not
my
portraying AIDS as a
grandmother.
bad thing, you know.
At that time, we were going over to my grandmother's house to actually watch some of these shows
Yep.
that we've talked about, and Quantum Leap was one of them. And so when they got onto that episode, I think that's when my grandparents basically were like, "This isn't suitable for our grandchildren to watch anymore."
Yeah, gay people don't
So,
really exist.
well, no, it wasn't gay people don't really
I know.
exist. It was they were like, "We don't want our grandchildren to know about this subject."
Right.
Meanwhile, we were in school and we were being taught about how AIDS and HIV is not passed by physical touch.
Right.
We were being taught like all this stuff, and we knew it
Only
existed.
when I
And
was being taught about AIDS, and this was one of those things that still to this day makes me mad. I was taught that it was only transmitted through anal sex. That was it. Because
well,
they were big on nailing it to the homosexual males, and just only people who could possibly ever get it were homosexual males. Boy,
the
that made me mad. It still makes me
what
mad.
I found, if you have HBO Max, you have HBO Max, right?
Hmm.
Okay, so I found and the band plays on HBO Max.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch that movie about the AIDS epidemic, and from that time period, all the actors in it lost friends that they considered family or just really close friends during the epidemic. Richard Gere, I know, is in it playing one of his friends that was a playwright that died from AIDS related complications. Um, someone's playing Dr. Fauci. Um, yes, that
Mm-hmm.
is the truth, and
Oh, yeah.
he portrays Dr. Fauci exactly on how he actually acted. In which case, he actually prevented the public from knowing information about the HIV and AIDS virus, which
Mhm.
further led to the discrimination of gay men
Mhm.
specifically,
Yeah.
which led
So did
to
Ronald Reagan.
yeah, which
I mean,
also led
so
to
it's it's one of those things.
yeah.
It's like, It's
It's
brutal.
not just that. It also led to decades long um, discrimination for donating blood.
Blood. Yeah,
Both me,
I
both
still
me.
think you guys can't donate blood.
No, we
I'm not
can't.
100.
No, we still can't. We're not
Yeah,
allowed.
you can't.
We have to abstain from sex for a year if we want to
Mhm,
donate blood. And what the sad thing is both me and Bill are O negative,
mhm.
which
Makes
means
you
we have
universal donors.
universal donor blood.
Mhm.
We could, if we donated, it would help a ton of people, but unfortunately,
You
because
can't.
we are married, neither of us can.
Yep.
So
And that's still one of those. Well, but you and I talked about this. I mean, I talked with you and Bill last time I was there,
yeah,
um, about how it still bothers me,
yeah,
all of the crap that was loaded up
oh
in the
yeah,
world in my head as a Gen Xer, that I had to go and find out, "What? You mean you guys are normal people? That's so weird." I expected you
yes,
guys to be like monkeys or something. I don't know
yeah.
what I expected.
Oh,
It was so
messages from
messages
Bill. We mentioned
from
AIDS. He comes.
Bill. But I mean, that was what I was saying. I was like, when I was at your house, I was talking about how there was so much deprogramming that has to be done.
Yeah.
There's
Oh
so
no,
much
and
deprogramming.
Donald actually raises a fairly good point. When I was in school as well, I was told that if I was eating pizza, specifically pizza, with a person that had HIV or AIDS, if they burnt the roof of their mouth and then we kissed open mouth, I could get it.
Right.
That's exactly on how it was told to me. And
Well, I mean, like I said,
that is false. A
it was better than what they were telling us in the 80s, because it
That
was.
was the 80s.
Well, no, I'm just saying, well, early 80s or whenever.
Yeah,
'Cause
this
you and
is
I are
how we were.
offset by just a few years, but we're
Yeah,
offset by a few years, and
yeah.
it did evolve quite a bit.
Because the AIDS epidemic started in the early 80s, which would have, like when I was around in kindergarten age. And then, so you have that, and then you basically, as the 80s went on, the information started being sorted better, but it was way worse because people were still believing the first information.
Right.
What is this? Heavy Topic Friday?
Well,
Well,
you know what?
it
We could
was
always go back to
supposed to be.
webtoons. Webtoons is good.
We got into Quantum Leap,
Yeah,
and they were doing it'd be nice if Quantum Leap was diverse, and or that was what Pepper was saying. I said, actually, I felt like Quantum Leap was way out there on the edge of
For its
what
time, yeah.
could be said in
for
1989.
the time, yes, maybe, but
I think for
looking,
its time, it was diverse for the people for whom he assumed their identities.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't feel like the staff of where he came from felt very diverse.
Right. I mean, it was two white males, but it was only two males, so you couldn't really tell if that was. I mean, there were only two characters,
yeah.
and then Biggie,
So
which
in
Well, at the
was.
very beginning, they show the staff of all the people that are running around while he's
Yeah,
trying to
in
kill
one
them.
episode, yeah, I think you're right. But it's even then, you wouldn't know whether they were binary, non-binary, or what
yeah,
they're, because you only saw them for maybe a minute or two. There was a girl in there because Dean Stockwell's character was trying to get into her pants because she was just that kind of person.
so
But
so
interestingly enough, his character got sort of deconstructed in the show for being misogynistic. Like the show was on Al for being a misogynist.
well,
Hmm.
yeah, you can actually. I do remember my mom and my grandmother talking about that when
Hmm.
they did cover it. Like I said, I couldn't see every episode, like
I'm
because
still
of
afraid
what
of
they
sitting on
discussed.
toilet seats in public
I
because of
have
that
different
stupid
reasons why I don't want to sit on
that
public
stupid
toilet seats,
well, it's
and
not
it's not
AIDS,
to
but
do with
it's
AIDS.
not AIDS specific. It's you can catch everything from sitting on a public toilet seat.
Right.
Yeah, I actually have a friend who was dating someone, and they had to admit when they before they started having bedroom relations that his partner at the time basically got herpes by
Mhm.
sitting on a toilet seat.
I
So
can see that.
that is what I'm really scared about sitting on a public toilet seat.
No, I
Right.
just think it's gross to share butt space with other people.
Right.
You have a guest room in your
Well,
house.
and it's like it's a thing. Like I I even have a problem with using bathrooms at other people's houses. I just
Right?
don't. I don't. I just it's better that way. I just but I've got my bathroom and it's my spot and it's mine. And I share it with my wife under protest.
It's like the
Not really under
Rick and Marty
protest.
episode where he has a whole planet just for his own toilet
Right.
because he's poop shy.
He's poop shy. Um,
Rick and Morty. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I am what we really are doing is what started this whole thing today was I was looking into the the webtoons. I was looking into webtoons and it's a vertical format and we were talking about different formats and how to get them to be work as a print and as a long format um, and things like that. And so we've been kind of um, talking about that, and that was where we were headed. Was where do you classify Bellatrix Rising as a comic? Do you classify it as a sci-fi drama, or is it sci-fi slice of life? Or so where would we how would we so that's what started this whole thing. Does it have mature themes? I don't know. Do you think you'd really call Star Trek to have mature themes? And I think we've all agreed that, yeah, by their definition, Star Trek has mature themes.
Mm-hmm.
Because really, Bellatrix Rising is Star Trek. It's just my interpretation of Star Trek. I've
And
just
how
changed all of the names to and the uniforms and the spaceships and stuff like that. But other than that, it's my Star Trek episodes, my fan scripts that I wrote for Star Trek. So that's all.
there's something for you. It combined a little bit of Highlander into Bellatrix Rising. Have a race of people that try to kill one another
Because there
and
can
gain
only
their
be
power
one.
because there can only be one of their race.
Right? There can be only one.
But yes, Porcelain Throne one should be good.
I was thinking. So I'm kind of going lateral on you here. I was thinking about one day you were talking about sexuality,
Mhm.
and of the different species and whatnot. And I'm like, and then I was thinking about adoption, and I was like, I wonder if there's a race that's kind of like, some animals on our planet that just kind of drop them and go, like, off you
Right.
go, good luck.
Good luck.
Or maybe they're plant based and they, pop a seed out and it eventually grows. Well, like how would a civilization evolve from that? I think part of growing into a level of civilization for space travel is you have to at least form communities and work together, be cooperative at some point. So I figure at some point, a species like that would probably engage in like some kind of adoption practice where they figure out that if they work together, so they'll find less younger versions of their species and like bring them in, and they would form, I don't know, I guess in our sense, tribes or uh, form communities to learn together and grow together. And then perhaps they would, in some weird agricultural sense, breed. But then once they pop out, they're like, okay, we're going to start learning you.
Right.
But they wouldn't
Right.
have that
I
normal
was
parent dynamic because their species just usually just drops them off and goes, right?
right, but I
So,
was thinking a lot about that too because in my structure, I had set up that structure of the government, how the government perceives married, um, and was thinking about the whole concept was if you have a child, you have to have a primary so that the government knows who to go to in case, to take care of the child. So you have to have a registered primary. But then I thought about it and I was like, what I don't have in my structure is how do you adopt? So I think there needs to go the other direction. And actually, it turned out to be really cool in my story because I have introduced a 14-year-old girl to the story, right? She's coming from 500 years in the past. She has no parents. She has no family. She's got nobody that would even know her. And the odds of her family being rescued off of Earth are extremely slim to begin with. So I thought, oh, somebody's going to have to adopt her at least for a few more years so that somebody is responsible. Somebody is where the government looks to, until she hits, in my world, majority. And the majority is a point where your frontal lobe is fully formed for humans. For each race, it's a point, but it's still the same thing. The doctors scan you and they say, nope, you still got time. And then, at some point they scan you and they go, oh, welcome to being an adult. Congratulations. Go have a party, or whatever. There's different points for each race. Well, she's 14 and, generally that majority is like 20 or 22 or something like that. So she's nowhere near that yet. She's still in the adolescent stage. So she needs to have someone, a guardian
Mhm.
of some sort. And I think that they're going to remove the biological function of it. So guardian is just guardian. It doesn't matter whether you actually had sex and then generated the child or whether you adopted the child from a family that lost the parents or didn't want to have the child. None of that matters to the government. You're just the guardian and this is just the child. And
I
that's
think
just
some
the way it goes.
I think some interesting uh, sort of the issues you would have to overcome interspecies wise would be perhaps a species like mine is more communal in the sense that parenting isn't like a one-to-one relationship or guardianship isn't one-to-one. They
Mhm.
might have like various other adults will adopt in that they concern themselves with your growth as a person, and that's fine in their community. And so they might try to do that to a human, and human guardians or human parents might find that offensive. Like, whoa, whoa, whoa! You're not. It's not your responsibility to
Right.
parent my child. But to them, like that's their whole thing.
Right.
So, like, how do you overcome that?
They start herding your child, not hurting, but herding.
Yeah,
Like they're like, oh, come this way. We'll help you get into the car and we'll help you get in. Oh, we'll help you make food. And you're like, the kid's 15. They can get into the car by themselves. They can make food. You don't need to help them. Oh, well, 15 would be too young for our kids, or whatever. You could have all that kind of stuff too. Um, but
and then
yeah, the more I think about that, now that you mention that, though, maybe the government should have more than one primary for multiple reasons. One, what if you're polyamorous and you marry multiple people? What if you want to count two parents as your primary? What if you want to count five parents as your primary? Um, so
well,
uh,
also,
I mean, like, so it should be open up. I should open it up a little bit, but I think that there also needs to be, I think what it should be is primary and then secondaries, because what the government's really looking for is if we find you dead on the side of the road, who do we contact?
right.
And they don't really want to contact 20 people. They want to contact one, right? And then move to the ones on your secondary list if they can't get a hold of your primary. But that's really what they're looking for. If you die, who decides your estate?
Mhm.
You know, who's in charge of your estate? Who's your next of kin?
Right.
That's essentially what the primary is. So you would declare who the primary is, even for a child, for the same reason. You know what I mean? Like you'd still do the same thing. This
Right.
is we call your mom first because your mom's the one that's always at home, or whatever. We call your dad, like we were just talking about this morning because I was on a conference call with all of my offspring's teachers, and they've been emailing my wife, but she leaves at 10 o'clock in the morning and comes home at 7 at night. So they're like, if you really want response, you should email Guy because he's there when Kai comes home, you know. So
I think
that's kind of a thing that
another thing too
changed my mind.
in between species that you'll need to overcome too is when you were talking about adulthood, when you classify that.
Mhm.
So I think there's two different categories of what an alien species might judge of us. So, like, if you imagine an alien species comes to us and they have to evaluate us without knowing anything about us,
Right.
they might find there's two different measurements for what constitutes human adulthood. One is our ability to reproduce, and one is what our species might consider adulthood to be for us, which might include certain mental clarity and
Right.
responsibility and things like that sort. And so that would be something that all of the species that come together are going to have to figure out because it's going to be different for every species. And so you might have to go, okay, well, what do your people consider your species to be an adult? And how do we classify that? How do we measure that?
Right.
So that when I, as alien doctor, treats your species, how do I know?
Yeah. Well, that was something that I just made a concession in my world, that there is a different time between sexual maturity and maturity.
Right.
And I make that logic jump not just arbitrarily, but I assume that most intelligent species have become intelligent over being just a base animal,
Mhm.
and that's an additional amount of effort or work or
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it. So all of the intelligent species in the galaxy, in my galaxy, will have a different time when they are biologically an adult, because that would be the time that as an animal you'd be able to accomplish the things that you need to accomplish to do animal. But
Mhm.
then to make it to a species that can build spaceships, that
Mhm.
requires more growing time.
Right.
So
See,
I'm
the thing.
assuming that, making
Yeah.
that assumption. So everybody has adolescence,
Mhm.
which is the moment you are sexually mature to the moment where you are an adult. That's different for each
Yeah.
species. Like some species, it's only a couple of years.
Yeah.
But for humans, it's like 10 years. It takes us forever to get there. Uh,
The problem I have with that, and it's not that you're wrong. It's that something you'd have to overcome is some alien species, due to their level of intellect, may never consider that humans ever become adults because
right.
we never meet their threshold of adults. So
Uh,
we're
and,
we're adolescent our entire lives.
right. Right. But there has to be a point where you can vote.
Hmm.
To enter into the democracy, you have to be able to be old enough to commit to long-term, enter into long-term documentation, own a house, own a
Yeah.
car. When can you do all of that? Responsibility, long-term responsibilities. When can you be a primary for someone else so that you can be responsible for their estate, responsible for their body, responsible for what their wishes. There has to be a moment of that someone just defines.
Yeah.
And I think what happened was, for the races that are like you were talking about, well, humans never achieve that. What happened was somebody went to the humans and said, okay, when do you consider yourselves fully capable of knowing when you can do this? And they would say when the frontal lobe is fully developed, which in us is about 25-ish, give or take. Some people it goes faster, some people it goes slower. Um, but it's easy to tell when you hit sexual maturity. There's actually a biological thing that occurs there, because puberty starts.
Yeah.
Then it's easy to tell medically when you hit majority. Um, and so those things, and then it's easy to tell when you hit elderly as well, because at that point in time, women hit menopause. It's harder to tell in men, but I'm sure that, I made up mythological thing which says when our metabolisms slow down.
Mhm.
I'm assuming they just recently found out that our metabolisms slow down in our 60s, and it happens. But I think what happens is in both males and females, we hit something,
Mhm.
and we'll find it in the next 20 years or 30 years that there is a hormone shift or hormone balance that happens equally in males and females at a point, and you hit elderly at that point in time. And depending on what your race structure is, you change function in society from worker to storyteller, whose job it is to teach and give the next generation information so that they hold your community values, they hold your cultural values, and and that kind of stuff. So all your teachers are going to be elderly, by just the function. That won't mean that all the teachers will be, but majority of the teachers would be in the elderly zone. um, so that's I mean, I was just restructuring kind of like how would I do our culture if I were king, you know, how would I restructure it? And I could change anything. That would be what I would do because that would make more sense. That gives elderly people value
Yeah.
even when they are no longer able to, lift 20 logs and haul them to the truck.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore. You'll break all your bones. So now you have a value to society by being the teacher who teaches people how to lift all the logs correctly so that they don't hurt their back, you know, or whatever.
I think those are like important things that would be interesting to see in the story of how to overcome in terms of adulthood between different species and contributing to a organized system in such a way that can accommodate species that are of lesser intelligence and higher intelligence.
Hmm.
I mean, those are things that we as a species have to encounter in our own species because, like, if half your population was, tribes that lived in the middle of nowhere that didn't have an education system, and you're saying they have a vote in like a super intelligent civilization, like
Right.
maybe Atlantis was there, right? And so now you have Atlanteans that's super intelligent, and you're saying these two people need to come together and their votes need to be equal in
Right.
deciding how the civilization should go forward. There's gonna be some conflict
There
there. I
is. How do you get the Zerg to vote from StarCraft? You
right,
know,
with the
you have
protons.
to you have to get the Zerg in here to vote, and all they're going to do is go paka paka. And
Yeah.
really, they all voted yes. That's
Mhm.
great. Is that because that was the first option? Yep.
Mhm.
It
And
was
so
yes, and then no
yeah,
was underneath it. So they all
and,
voted the first one.
and both are negative, right? So you have the species that doesn't know a whole lot, and you
Right.
have the species that knows a lot and probably thinks they know everything, but they don't.
Right.
So how do you make that all work?
Well, even if you do have like levelized intelligence,
Mhm.
where you don't need to necessarily have super arrogant, you know what I mean? Like we consider at this time that we have more intelligence than dolphins,
Right.
but that we're considering that dolphins are sentient in
Yeah.
some way. They are cognizant and aware of themselves. And that puts them into the realm of they're kind of a sentient species on this planet.
Mhm.
Okay, but they also have like the intelligence of a 5-year-old. Would you
Right.
really want to put them into an election for president of the United States?
Right.
Right? Because they probably just say, who's going to give me more fish? And
Mhm.
not care about whether this one's going to be, setting fire to the universe or this one eats kittens in the morning or whatever is the political yammering for today.
Mhm.
So there's a certain logic even with that. Right. Well, right. Because they are most intelligent because all they really care about is fish and not whether you're, which, right. Exactly. And the dolphins thought they were intelligent for the exact same reasons.
Mhm.
And so, but anyway, but I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. What do you do when you have a disproportionate intelligence?
Mhm.
So, and it doesn't even have to be an arrogant function. We
Yeah.
just know that we probably shouldn't let the dolphins vote, you
I,
know.
I've heard some interesting thing where it comes down to like responsibility.
Yep.
So like, um, if those two different disparate levels of intelligence species do something wrong, basically the higher intelligence species would be more responsible for the wrong actions than the less intelligent one.
Mhm.
And they have more responsible things they need to do as the more intelligent species
So
because
like
they
a
have.
responsibility level. I agree with that.
It's
I write that
interesting.
down. That's so cool.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know how it plays out, and maybe that's in storytelling.
No, but maybe what you end up with is a voting weight depending on your responsibility level.
Yeah.
The Dolphins still can vote,
Mhm.
but their voting weight is very low because their responsibility level is very low,
Yeah.
right? Whereas,
And that also crosses species too. So if you have a really intelligent X species X, well, their responsibility is higher than the rest of their entire species
right,
because they have that intelligence.
right, their responsibility level gets weighted higher.
Mhm.
So the Dolphins still have a capability of voting against President, I'm going to trash the oceans,
Mhm.
because like they all will vote no. And that all weighs in. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, the Dolphins really don't want President, I'm going to trash the oceans to be voted in.
Mhm.
I see they actually did have an opinion. Most of the time it just comes in as noise because it'd be, 50% voted yes and 50% voted no, which means it's just static.
Right.
So they didn't understand the question. But when they all vote no unilaterally, then you're like, oh, they have an opinion. So it
Mhm.
weighs,
Mhm.
so they still would have a vote. It's just that their noise usually gets rejected because it's
Right.
noise. It hits a certain point where it's just purling noise, and they know that it's out of the parameters, but then they still have the ability to make a change if they need to. All they need to do is figure out societally that we don't want president, we're going to trash the oceans to be in there, you know
Mhm.
because that would be, but that's the thing. You could even have that, maybe not even as a point. um they didn't they didn't understand. The aliens did not understand that dolphins were sentient, so they were destroyed.
Mhm.
So that's an important point, and it's going to become a thing because there were a number of sentient species on the planet, but they only picked the ones that were making transmissions because that's all they could see. They
Yeah.
were blind to any of the other creatures on there on the planet Earth. So they didn't save any other sentient species, just humans. So, but that's a question coming in from Brent. So the thing I'm thinking is maybe it's not specific to a race. Maybe it's I don't want to say IQ, but let's just say for the sake of our argument right now, it's
Yeah.
IQ. If your IQ is below, or your IQ just makes a modifier, your
Yeah.
vote is weighed more by your IQ. I'm maybe not your IQ, but you get the idea. Like,
Yeah.
uh, it could
Some
even
capacity
be,
for intelligence.
it could be, oh, it could be merit because I'm trying to make a capitalistic meritocracy
Mhm.
as the structure, a democratic capitalistic meritocracy with a direct democracy. Um, and in that instance, that would give you drive to get more merit. And merit would be things that you do where the more you assist other people, the higher your merit is. If your job is solely serving you, you don't get as much merit as if you go and volunteer for, a homeless shelter or whatever. That encourages people to push
Mhm.
out, you know. But also, your higher merit
Mhm.
gives you more weight in a vote.
The problem I have with merit is the definition of what constitutes merit
It would
because
have
that
to be a
can change.
societal decision. It
Yeah,
has
and
to
it
be
would change
societal.
over time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
merit today is not merit tomorrow. And then how do you navigate that?
No, but there are two levels of servitude that you can see. And I think as long as the rule is we change it, we change the value, there's probably a market, like a stock market of some sort, that would be in place that says if you do 1 day of service in this in a child care center, it's +1 merit, and if you do it at an elderly, it's +1 merit, and it's 0.25 merits if you work in a soup kitchen for one. Or, you know what I mean? I'm sure there's like a market, but it would have to be decided probably by the elders,
Yeah.
and another job of the elderly,
Yes.
to decide what merits are and how they value, but it would be based constitutionally on how much you're helping your fellow man, would be
So
the structure.
an example I could think of where merit would change would be you're in a time of peace. You're generally non-warful organization,
Yeah.
and merit is rather well distributed across various aspects of society. But then your organization or government encounters a threat in the universe, and
Mhm.
war is now upon.
More valued.
And so now merit is, did you serve in our military? No, I need to go to work. I need to go to work. So merit becomes, did you serve in the military? How
Right.
many of the enemy did you destroy? None of those other things you were doing for our people really matter, except as, like, are you serving as a medical tech or something like that? So merit completely shifts,
It
and
does,
then
and
you
I
matter.
concur.
Yeah,
So the merit stock market would value your medicals or your military service now
yeah. Mhm.
more than working in this, old folks home.
And would
Or
you
there might be things that are considered valuable in that one, like you could work at food service, which would be construed as a merit-based, helping others in society,
get?
but not really self-serving because it's not a very fun job or whatever. So
And then
in a time of peace, you could probably have that be this is worth a lot, and your military service isn't worth anything. But then we go to war, and those two would reverse.
right. And
You
then
know,
are there demerits where because you are non-war and you're against killing, no matter the circumstance, are
right,
you then getting negative merits because you are deciding not to serve?
right. Would
And
that becomes the other
yeah,
side of it?
yeah, because
Is
that
there?
happened. That happened in American culture during like the World Wars, where like
Mhm.
everything came about serving the war, and if you weren't part of that, you were demerited, so to speak,
Right.
and looked down upon because you were anti-war, especially during the Vietnam War. That's the best example.
Right,
Uh,
but I'm just formalizing that
yeah,
because that's exactly my thought is that would be the currency that we could do. Because I think that, I believe firmly that everybody has a right to basic life functions. So they have a right to oxygen, they have a right to water, food, especially since we've got replimats.
mhm,
Now you don't need to worry about growing the food. You just push a button and it materializes that. But then you get more merits if you fix and tinker the machines that break down. So, but if you want to, because the other thing is, I feel like people have periods of their life where they spin out, and you need to be able to just sit and spin out for a year. I mean, just burn out completely and then recoup and come back. And that should be built into the function. So you can do that. You won't lose your house. You won't lose your heat. You won't lose your water. You won't lose your oxygen, but you won't gain anything either. You're just stuck in
mhm.
one point. And if you do that for too long, a counselor will come by and say, "Are you okay?" you know, like, "Can I help you get back on your feet?" So that things don't get you don't end up with homeless. That's how you end up with homeless, is that these people spin out and then they end up on the side of the road all of a sudden, and you're like, "Whoa," so that's of course, I'm building a utopia in my brain, so all of
Right.
this may be
So
completely
I'll,
bonkers, you know.
I'll challenge your utopia. So everyone has a right to food and water because everything's replicated. So you've entered wartime, and the opposition organization, species, what have you, attacks your energy infrastructure, and there's not enough energy to power your replicators to feed everyone.
Right. Then what?
How do you decide who gets food and who gets water?
That
And you know
actually
it's a right.
that actually occurs in my story.
Yeah.
The main character comes from that spot. So I actually explore it,
Mhm.
and literally society breaks down in her colony,
Mhm.
and she ends up becoming a refugee. And so totally built in. I'm already there. I'm already right on it, man. That is exactly what I'm going to explore when we go into her backstory, because that's what happened.
I love that
There
you're
were
adding
two
to that.
sides that got into a fight, and one side decided to deprive the other side of power.
Mhm.
And once they did, that deprived them of food and water.
Yeah.
And that became
Well,
an
your
issue.
15-minute break is over.
I know. I gotta get back to work. I'd love to
Love
chat.
you, Bill. See you later.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
I love that he thought that, though, because, like, literally, that's what I want to explore. I built this utopia, and the first thing I'm doing is taking the blocks out from underneath it. And he's on the same page, which means that it's going to be interesting for other people to read it too. They're going to want to know.
He's a Trekkie, so
Yeah, I guess it
he
makes
likes
sense that
those
we'd be
types
thinking in
of
the same.
things.
Yeah, we'd be thinking in the same wavelength.
Yep.
We are of the same. We are of the same cloth. We're cut of the same cloth.
Yes.
So, anyway, okay. So yes, and Brent, you're right. Merits could be the currency, and I actually think that I will call it something, whatever, the Unity dollar or whatever. However, the way it works is you earn 1 unit, whatever that unit is, for 1 hour of work, whatever your work is. You gain extra units for serving society. And everything is locked so that 1 40-hour week or whatever is the decision is
Mhm.
enough to pay for all of your basic needs and no more. So the system is locked that way. And then, like I was saying, I love the idea that Bill came in here and, like, there's a stock market, so to speak, that values up or down other things. So what you earn on merits. Good morning, Colton.
Colton, why
Colton
are you
is
not
out on
on the show,
Twitch.
Colton?
Yeah, you could come in here for 15 whole minutes and tell us what you're doing next week. If you wanted to, because the show's only got 15 minutes left. So,
Yeah, I know.
anyway, okay. So I filled out. Here's what I wrote on Webtoons. 500 years after the Earth was destroyed in a devastating galactic war, the surviving human race has joined a federation of aliens called the Unity. Traveling across the stars, Starship skipper Chang Li helms the diminutive corvette UMC Kittiwake as they go on adventures across the galaxy. Does that sound pretty accurate?
Yeah.
Do we need to add more?
No.
That's
I
all right,
mean,
Colton. I mean, we'll make
a
fun of you,
synopsis.
but that's not, uncommon in
Yeah.
our. That's nothing new.
No, a synopsis doesn't have to be super long. It can be very short.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the times, like if I look at synopsises and they have like 2 paragraphs for the synopsis, I'm not interested in that. That means that their storytelling's complicated, and I just pass it.
Right.
So yeah, it's fine. Short
So
to the
does
point.
that sound? What do you think, Brent? Okay, something other than the word federation. Joined. A union of aliens.
But that would be considered weird counterproductive.
League. I like
Are
League.
we sure we want to do League?
The League of Extraordinarily Alien Alliance.
Alliance?
Oh, Alliance.
Alliance actually sounds a little bit better for what you're describing.
Oh, Unity. Joined an alliance of aliens called the Unity. Coalition. No, I like Alliance. I think I like Alliance.
I think Alliance would work better because Coalition sounds like the opposite, like what they're going up against.
Yeah, Coalition is definitely, well, and we have to stay away from C words because the other side is a C word and I keep forgetting it. And so Commonwealth. That's what it's called. The bad guys are the Commonwealth. They were called the Confederacy, but then I was like, no, that's just so loaded in our society. It needs to not be
The
Confederate.
Coalition Commonwealth.
The cream puff. The
The cream
cream
puff.
puff of
Okay.
aliens. That's it.
Puff.
We're going to call it cream puff of aliens.
Okay.
They've joined a cream puff of aliens called the Unity. Okay, so what do we think other than that? Do we think this is a solid? Yeah, well, I actually intentionally put Federation in there for that reason. However, I think that that's probably a good idea to not do it. So I will keep that though. And I will put it in my thing over here, which I'm saving, a collection of aliens, all three of them. We put them on the shelf. We've got them mint in box. So, okay. Then all I am doing now is saving this. And we're going through. So what we've got now is 500 years after the Earth was destroyed in a devastating galactic war, the surviving human race has joined an alliance of aliens called the Unity. Traveling across the stars, Starship skipper Chang Lee helms the diminutive Corvette UMC Kittiwake as they go on adventures across the galaxy. And I'm going to put this as the thumbnail. So I'm going to build up the thumbnail, put stars behind her, and put the Kittiwake behind her too, so that you can see the Kittiwake. See you later there, Colton. Maybe you can join us later.
Can I make a suggestion?
No. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely, you can.
Keep it simple.
Well, I want a spaceship in there, so you see it's a spaceship.
Right, you can, but
I'm going to put stars.
Don't make it. No, just put the spaceship.
And a white background?
Put the spaceship and whatever in like a white or a black background. Basically, you want to keep it simple because though not everyone's going to see that full size like you're looking at it right now. Remember, it's going to be shrunken down.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
So the moment that you shrink it down, people are not going to notice it, and then you have Bellatrix that's going right across. Mm-hmm. So it's going to even be if you put a word in there, plus a spaceship, plus Chang. That's a lot going on already.
That's a lot going on.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Stupid.
Yeah. Now you have two thumbnails that you can do, and you can put both of them in. Mm-hmm. You have a long format one, and you have the square one. Mm-hmm, Just remember that. So you can do the spaceship in the long one if that's what you want.
Well, let's zoom out and take a look at what this looks like. It's not so bad. Keep it simple, smarty. Yeah, it's always stupid for me. But let's look at other thumbnails that are here, right?
You want to go to the series thumbnails.
I am. Right, because that's the series thumbnail.
Yeah, go scrolling up. Go to...
Hang on. Subscribe first. This is subscribe, right? Check?
Yeah.
Or is it here?
Let's see here real quick.
Subscribe. Okay. That way I don't lose it. I don't want to lose it because this one's cool. All right, so here are the series thumbnails.
Right. So if you scroll down, there's one. So, go back to where it's the girl and the baby chicks. All right, that's one that I follow. It's a space opera as well.
Right.
So as you can tell, the one with the chicks and the girl, that's basically all it is, and it's a close up. It's not even a full body shot. All of their stuff, all of their thumbnails always have a full face picture from one of the things in it.
Here's why I'm looking at it. I think this is the thumbnail that they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. That's the one that you're talking about. So
we are in the wrong sort of function to have her like this. What we really need is more this of her.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I was saying. Like, you have a lot already going on, and then you reduce it, and
No,
it's
I'm with you. I'm
really
with
hard
you.
to
I'm with you. It's cool.
translate.
We're good. We're good.
Yeah, so
Um,
like having Chang close
she
up,
actually looks like she's got her arms akimbo if you do just this part,
yeah,
which that works. So we'll do
yeah,
arms. We can do arms akimbo. Like she looks like she's just sitting there, like with her arms akimbo. So that works.
yeah. And then remove Bellatrix Rising. Brent is correct. You should actually take Bellatrix Rising, the that out of it, because no one's going to be able to read it.
Okay.
Now you can still, with taking
Oh no,
remove
it works
Bellatrix
for me.
Rising, you taking that out. Now it seems feasible to do part of the spaceship, but not the full part of the spaceship.
Right.
Or you can do a star chart, because we all know that you love the star charts.
Actually, the star charts are probably better. You're right for multiple reasons that would make just Brent want to kill me.
Yeah.
So
Think of a photo ID badge. Yeah, that's
yep.
pretty much what you want.
They said 1026 by 1026 to start and
Hmm.
then work from there. So let's take all of this, all copy and paste. She's here. You just can't see her because she's huge. So let's go ahead and do the
She's
shrinky
so
thing.
huge.
Oh my God, how big is she? No, don't rotate. Oh God.
May make something interesting.
All right. All right. So we will take.
Wow. Yeah, compared to the actual size that you needed, she
Yeah.
was pretty big.
Well, yeah, I always draw at 600 DPI, huge. 11 by 17 at
Yeah,
600 DPI, always.
yeah,
Yeah, because that's the biggest size I will ever use. So, okay, so we'll start here. That looks like a much better thumbnail.
yeah.
Um,
So if you want to put a background in, like I said, just keep it really simple.
right.
Don't do
I'm with
don't
you.
do something super weird. Has to relate to Chang for
Yeah.
sure. Um, so I'm not saying like, hey, how about you sit there and do like something like a top right or left corner? Yeah, I could probably see that, especially since they put it in the corner later on, like when you bring up your story page and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but
So
like
these
you can
guys are
add
doing, what are we doing over here? Because like they said PNG or JPEG. I'm seeing a
PNG.
lot of
PNG
um
just makes it easier. Like if you save it out to a PNG, you have no background.
well that I know. That's what I'm
So
saying. So it's got an alpha channel already in it.
mhm.
So when I look here, though, these are most definitely have backgrounds, are, whatever, things like that. So
Well,
that
I'm
works.
saying like you can still do a background. I'm just
Mhm.
saying like you
I
want to
know.
keep it really simple. That's all.
I'm with you. That's not what I'm asking. Like, for example, I'm noticing like I could put her to one side.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm
Oh,
noticing a number of
actually,
things.
wait. Go back to Chang real quick. That actually does not look half bad
No,
for
I like
what
it.
you're talking about.
I like it. She's looking
It,
to the left.
yeah,
She's, yeah, I like it a lot. Um,
yeah. I think that would be a better choice than the opposite side,
I
because
think
you're
so
right.
too.
It does go into that bottom corner, so you need it to fit.
I think so too. Let's go on ahead and real quickly. Let's. Can't see on this monitor. Let's go back here to Bellatrix Rising and completes, and I can actually put some of the old stuff in, which will look great, and that'll be fine because sadly, the new star maps are not half as cool as the old star maps were. Just
By
kind
the
of
way, the one that I had you pull up, Space Boy.
uh-huh.
The author of that one is the same person that does a comic called Brick by Brick, and that comic is one that sits there and talks about how to organize to make a comic.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's a comic about making comics.
Oh,
How
there you
meta.
go.
How meta can you get?
Right, because we can take like this guy and just put him behind like that. That might be too noisy.
What if you just had reduce it?
Yeah, so I was thinking.
That's a little bit better. The other thought process, and I don't know if Brent
The
would
Unity
actually
patch too could be a thing.
I don't know if Brent would actually go for this one, but have part of her ship coming out from behind her.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be as useful.
I
Not
think
100%.
the star charts would be better.
I think the star charts are better. It shows that it's space. It shows that it's Star Trek or Star Trek-esque. And then we get like Bellatrix Complex as a word right behind her, which explains why it's Bellatrix. And then we get things like 35 Arendani and things like that, which are obviously clearly a thing. I think the ship is too much. It'd be too much thingies here. I think we're over our thingy limit. So I think that
Tell
I
that
think
to
this is a
Chuck
good.
Berry.
Tell that to what?
Tell it. You said you're over your thingy limit, and I said tell it to Chuck Berry.
Right. So, but I think
So anyways, I'm going to use my last 2 minutes to describe what I'm going to be working on next
What are you
week.
doing next week? Kevin needs to really. I mean, he's like, it's technically 11 o'clock.
Whatever. So
and he's calling to say, "What are we doing today?"
All right. Well, on that moment, I just will keep to myself and say, "How about we end the show now?"
No, it's all good. Don't let Kevin push you off the camera.
So, anyways, so this past week I did a little bit more research. I reached out to one of my friends because I have some characters that I needed to make sure that I had proper stuff formatted for, because we've talked about the trans community and how a lot of gender fluid people feel about being called and all of that stuff.
Right.
And I needed to get actual better wording for it, because I'll be clear. I was asking a teacher who adopted out of the foster care an older child. So I was just trying to make sure I had all of everything correct. What I found interesting is the group that I kind of reached out to kind of get this information for gave me a bunch of misinformation. And this is a group that's actually supposed to help and protect LGBT youth. Aww. And I'm talking about LGBT youth. And they gave me a bunch of misinformation. So now I have to kind of sift through both stuff, and I'm finding the actual information I needed through it. But that's what I'm going to be working on. I have a bunch of stuff I have to draw still, so that too.
Okay. So that's your battle plan then for the next week, is you got to do a whole bunch of this stuff. Can we expect to see that at the end of next week?
Well, I'm not sure yet. I know I'm going to have a heavier than normal workload this week because, Bill wanted me to start making money again. So I'm trying my best to figure out my schedule and see on how many projects I can juggle for paid work versus non-paid work.
Right. That's what I'm doing too.
So
we're in the stress money situation again over here.
We're not in a stress money situation. Me making money just helps things go a little bit smoother.
No, but we are in a stressed money situation. So there's sort of it's just a thing. So yeah, Kevin was kind enough to wait until 11 o'clock for the show to end, but then I'm like, but he like
He
literally
waited
waited
until
until
2 minutes before 11
right,
o'clock to actually call.
which is kind of like, really, did you have to do it that way? So
Sorry, he's your
okay,
friend. He's
then
forgetting.
that will work. Then we will probably go on ahead, and I'm just making this look like a Bellatrix thing because I'm adding all the little graphics. Yeah, he could watch the show and then he'd know when it was over, and I could talk to him, and I could say, "We're going to go to Troy's house tonight," and you can just because he's calling to say, "What are we doing tonight?" As he always does. He doesn't call Troy; he calls me. We're
So,
going to somebody else's house. It's like, really. Anyway,
Guy, also just make sure that you have Chang a little bit further away from the top
yep.
because it looks like part of her hair is starting to get cut off at the top.
So more like so.
Yeah, there you go.
Just give her some room. It's actually why I went ahead and cut this cutout in the center here, just so that it was there. I am not decided this is yellow yet. That's the color it was on. It probably will be black because black looks good right here, since that's the color we were already at.
Right.
No, that's not the
No.
color I wanted. You. And that layer there, probably black.
Okay.
It gives it sort of just a bracket. I like to put brackets around the pictures. All of the graphics in the comic are like this. So leave off the border.
Yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with that now that I'm looking at it. Minus the border real quick. That looks cleaner.
It does look cleaner. And also then doesn't represent all of the like astronet stuff, but that's okay. We'll live. So anyway, okay, cool.
Hey, you got your star chart.
Right? I got a star chart on there. So okay, cool. Well, then we're here. We'll just let this go. And then I will save as not here, but not that JPEG, and go to Bellatrix Rising and put this in administration.
Mm.
And this will be 1024 by 1024. 1024. I'm going to make one also that has just her so that we can do, because I'm seeing that over here too. I'm seeing, wow, somebody just really laid on the brakes out there. Hope everybody's okay.
Hope so too.
Because I'm seeing this, and I think this is a JPEG, or I mean I think
A
this is a
PNG.
PNG with a alpha channel.
Yep.
So I'm gonna look real quick to make sure that nobody's dead out here. Okay, well, I don't see anybody dead. So we've got kids in this neighborhood, and when I hear squealing tires, my first thought is my kid outside? You know,
Well, isn't your kid
is anybody's kid outside?
Well, is your kid in school right now?
No. Today is one of those school conference days. So,
Wait,
in
well, Bill
theory,
has off Monday. Isn't there a holiday?
yeah, we're
Okay.
having conferences. All the teachers were at school. I know. I talked to the whole mess of them in a Zoom meeting. They were all everywhere. It was cool. Okay.
I mentioned Bill, and he comes in, and I'm just like, we're trying to end the
Messages
show.
from Bill.
Monday is President's Day, and my company observes it as a holiday. So.
Yep. Well, and some reason that Jefferson County has decided to make the Friday before that a conference day. So effectively the kids get a 4-day weekend, which is cool. I wish they'd done that more when I was a kid. I would have loved to have more 4-day weekends. I mean, I'm like, yeah, you're lucky. Because I'm like,
you know what's really funny? and this is what gets me is because my grandparents had my mom keep us in private school. I found out that even though that we go back to school early and go back and come and leave school later in the year than public school, we had way more days off than normal public school. So Yeah, like it was like very weird when I realized that as an adult.
It's
Like,
because they tell you have to have a certain number of days, and
yeah,
it's not set up in a you have to be between September 3rd and June 2nd. It's it's you have to have 152 days of school or whatever. We can tell that here because that happens a lot with school is out on May 23rd, but you should expect that school will still be in through June 3rd because we have to, in case we have too many snow days, they'll throw those days at the end of the year and then graduation will move back and everything. I've seen
we
that a lot.
we had hurricane days.
Yeah. So we get snow days that may or may not. We've got a certain number of snow days allotted, but if we have a lot of snow days, it just happens to be one of those winters, then they've got buffer at the end of the year to push into June.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's a certain number of days that we have to have in school every year.
I think
So
what's the number of school days in Florida? I
it
think
doesn't.
it's not 180. I know it's less than
Well,
that.
no, I just made up a number.
Yeah,
We did this silly thing. Instead of taking days off, they created half days, which were essentially days off because it's not like the kids really learned anything, but technically they were in school.
Right. So,
I had a lot of those too.
yep. Brent's leaving for lunch, and I think I've got to go too. So I will talk to you guys
All right.
later. Have a good weekend. And for everybody else, remember to keep your eyes on the stars. Bye.
Bye.
Computer, good night.